How you doing, folks? James Larson here from 94.1 KRNA. Welcome to Craft 101, where we talk about craft beer on this podcast. I bring in my co-host. As always, he's the biggest Viking fan in Eastern Iowa, maybe all of Iowa, Drew Knutson from the Mellow Mushroom. 74 beers on tap down at your place. But we decided to bring in a beer drinker. We got my buddy, Kirk Hayden, now your buddy. And Kirk, you're kind of an aficionado of sorts on the IPAs and the craft beers. How did you get started drinking this great beer?
You know, I think it just was. I used to be a Bud Light guy, not gonna lie, and I was ready for something different. So I just started trying some other beers and trying to decide, do I like the taste of it? And it's probably been a couple of years, maybe, and really, kind of like the lagers, but really started to transition to the IPAs. And I think it was a lager, pale ale, IPA trip for me.
Right.
And realized I like the IPAs. I like the double IPAs. And that's actually transitioned me into, I like stouts and porters too.
Sure.
I mean, I just really broadened my beer tasting horizon.
That's what we're trying to do, James, is getting you up there. We're starting you on some true blondes and some pale ales. That's all beer, folks, is what we're talking about. But yes, that's you can't. Very few people can go straight to an IPA because it's usually more bitter.
And I was against it. I'll be honest with you guys. I was the Miller Lite, Coors Light, Bud Light kind of guy. And you saw it in my eyes. I was a little scared because this whole alcohol by volume, all of a sudden I'm drinking something with 12%. But you've really done a good job of schooling me, and we started slow. So talk about some of the great beers that are out there and why folks should be trying these beers instead of the traditional Bud Lights or Miller Lights.
Well, as Kirk and I were talking before we started this little session here, so many beers, so few time, so little time.
Right.
It is. We've got great local breweries in Iowa, just like I'm sure a lot of states do. But just to throw a couple out there real quick, Back Pocket, Reunion Brewery, right in Coralville, some of my favorite. But then you go to Deschutes, Lagunitas. I mean, we can go on and on talking about our favorite breweries. But there's some great beer out there, and I don't think it's necessarily a beer brewer that you're looking for. It's more of a style that you may like to trend to.
And with the technology, everything's changing, of course, with social media. And Kirk, just the other day when we were over at Metro Studios, you showed me this Untapped app. You had told me about it, but I didn't listen to you. Talk about how convenient that is and how cool that is for beer drinkers to have that right on their phone.
I call it Facebook for daddies.
Yeah.
And beer drinkers. It's awesome. It's a way to you get friends. I mean, you develop friends, but basically it is an app that if I decide tonight I want to go have a good IPA somewhere, I can look on the app and I can go, all right, well, I'm going to go over to Mellow Mushroom. They're a verified venue on the app. I can punch it up. I can look. I can see exactly the beers that they have on tap. Maybe they just changed a beer tap out today and added a great IPA from Firestone Walker in California, one of my favorite breweries, by the way. And maybe they added it. I might make a trip down to the Mellow Mushroom just because I saw that they have that beer on tap. I'm not maybe going there for the food. I'm going there for the beer. That's how I approach it. And so then I can go there. I can check in on my app. I can say that I'm having that beer at the Mellow Mushroom. My friends that I've acquired on Untappd get a notification. Hey, Kirk's having a beer at the Mellow Mushroom.
That's cool.
It's all good stuff, man. And then you get the interaction and back and forth, and you get to rate the beer. You can take a picture. I always take a picture at the venue.
Sure, yeah.
It's a little shout out to the venue with my beer in my hand. It's not of me. It's maybe some the Mellow Mushroom name in the background.
Yeah.
And you gain badges. That's the fun thing too.
So we're turning beer drinking, Drew, into kind of a hobby. So we're justifying the fact that we're going out with the guys and having a few beers.
Well, I'm going to be 50 this year, so my memory is, you know where my memory is. It's like 10 seconds long. Personally, that's where I use the Untappd app, is because it catalogs our beer. So it'll rate your beer depending on how you get to rate it. That's what I like about it. You get to rate the beer, 1 to 5. It's very, very simple. It's got a bar. You just slide. It's very user friendly. And then it's all of a sudden, what was that one dark beer that I liked? I can pull it up just like that if I can't remember. But as a business owner, as somebody that sells as much beer as I do, and how I like to change beer, it's very, very powerful, because the Untappd app will tell us who is liking what and at what level. And so I make my purchase decisions based on how people like beer. If it's over 3.5, the majority of people are going to like it. If a beer is under 3.5, I don't buy it because it just doesn't trend well.
All right, guys. Well, we need to wrap up, and I want to just do a little round robin real quick. Put you on the spot a little bit, and we'll start with Kirk. Why don't you give a recommendation to our viewers and our listeners, maybe a beer that you've already talked about, but something that folks could go out and try this weekend, and then maybe on next week's podcast, we'll talk about that. But give me a one beer recommendation for this weekend. Of course, it's a very big weekend. My Vikings, Drew's Vikings, are in the big championship game.
Vikes.
So what would you recommend for folks this weekend?
If you're not a craft beer drinker and you want to get into it, I recommend a Session IPA.
Sure.
It's a little bit lighter, not quite as bitter. The IBUs are going to be a little lower. That's a bitterness level gauge. And try a Session IPA. I like Firestone Walker Easy Jack. Great beer in my mind. It's one of those that you could take to tailgating, and you could sit alongside your buddy who's drinking a Bud Light and has 10 of them. You could have 10 of those Easy Jacks, same alcohol level. It's easy drinking, but it has that taste and the aroma that you don't get from a Bud Light or a Coors Light type of beer.
I like it. I like it. How about you, Mr. Knutson?
Well, we just replaced that Easy Jack with Exile Zoltan. That's another Session IPA. It's a really, really good beer, and it's local. I'm going to go to Reunion Brewery is what I'm going to, and I'm going to go with their IPA called the Tank Puncher. And it is just very floral, very, very good tasting, not as bitter on the swallow. So that's where I like it, where you can drink probably more than two of them. Sometimes for me, an IPA, after two, I'm done, just because there's a lot there, and the ABV volume. But that would be my recommendation. And yes, Vikings. Remember what I said? 37-10.
Yeah, I like it. Hopefully we'll be doing some celebrating after the weekend. That's all the time we have. I want to thank Kirk Hayden for stopping by, as well as Drew Knutson from the Mellow Mushroom. You can join him in Coralville. He's got 74 beers on tap, plus some awesome pizza options. And the reason we do this podcast each and every week, because our goal is to make beer drinking great again.